Can the Chroma console replicate everything that the Chase Bliss Generation Loss Mark II does? Let's find out. Those of you that are regular here on the channel, you'll see some of my recent videos on the Chroma console, and back in the day, loads of videos on the Gen Loss Mark II from Chase Bliss. In this video, I want to explore the texture module that sits within the Chroma console. There's loads of really interesting stuff in there. In fact, it's almost like the texture module has been based upon the noises that sit within the Gen Loss Mark II. I'm not sure whether that's purposeful or not, but I wanted to just share with you today sound samples to see what you think. I'm going to do something I don't normally do. I'm going to set a loop up. So I've actually got the LVX set up first in the chain to create a loop, and then I'm going to be able to talk and mess around with pedals without having to keep stopping and playing something, which is going to be quite refreshing actually. Maybe something I'll do a lot more moving forwards, but let's see. I suppose let me know in the comments, that'd be really useful actually. Do you care about seeing someone playing an instrument in sort of demo or instructional videos like this, or do you just want to hear the pedal or the piece of gear and not really fussed about that? Let me know. So we're looking at the texture module, and this is these 5 options here and this dial here are what I think is essentially the vast bulk of what sits within the Gen Loss. And by the way, this is a pedal that I really, really like, so I'm not saying this lightly. But let's see what you think. So as we click into that, it turns red, which represents filters, you can see on the menu there. And you can hear that essentially this is acting as a filter. It's EQing out certain frequencies. So really cool. And the Gen Loss Mark II, slightly different functionality from the original Gen Loss, but you can adjust the failure and model dials here to be high pass, low pass filters. So if we go into classic mode, yeah, and as you can see in classic mode, this one here is the high pass, failure turns into high pass. And low pass. So kind of similar, slightly different controls obviously, but does pretty much the same sort of thing. Let's go on to the second part. So squash on the Chroma console is a compressor, but the hologram describe it as a heavy-handed compressor. So it does overdrive, give you an overdriven sound source once you start cranking it up. But I really like the compressor in this. I think it does a really good job. And I guess I'm going to compare this to a little bit to the Saturate clean signal. Now let's start to add the compressor. So at low volumes it makes an impact. Okay, let's compare that to the Gen Loss. So there's no saturation in there. Cool. So there you go. Again, pretty similar. And let's not forget that the squash or the compression, I wouldn't really use it to overdrive the signal overly, because you've got a whole module here which has got all sort of drives and fuzzes and all sorts of good stuff in. So wouldn't be using it for that. I'd just be adding it to compress, and from playing around with this pedal the last few weeks, it does a really nice job of evening out your signal and giving you that consistent compressed tone. Let's go to our next sound on here, which is Cassette Green. So Cassette is probably replicating the flutter and the wow elements of the Gen Loss. It does all that sort of worn tape degradation sort of thing. So again, let's start low, and then we'll go in and compare it to the Gen Loss. So even at low amount, you can hear the impact it's having on the signal. As we turn it up, you start getting that flutter and warble. I guess it's worth just saying that in the Gen Loss, you can obviously impact wow and flutter as separate entities, and then on top of that, you've got failure, which I'll come to, and you can combine all of that. The Chroma kind of chucks it all into one, so the cassette option on here gives you all that wow flutter and tape degradation. You can't distinguish between it, but you can do a little bit different in the broken and interference. We'll get to those in a second. So again, let's just quickly hear that before we jump over to the Chase Bliss. And Chroma's also got broken module, so we'll click that. I'm going to the next one, the 4th of 5, and this is giving us a load of random sort of pitch drops and interference, and well, you'll hear what that sounds like now. Very, very cool. So independent control here. We're going to go to failure now. So I'll turn wow and flutter off. Awesome stereo spread in the Gen Loss Mark II. In fact, the failure stereo spread is probably my favourite element of this pedal next to the saturation. And that probably, for me, aligns mostly with interference on the Chroma console. Cassette broken interference, whilst they're technically different, all do similar sorts of things, and you can't do any of those three things together at the same time, which is really important to say. Whereas on the Gen Loss, you can add wow, flutter and failure all at the same time if you want, although it does get a bit overwhelming, as you'll hear in a second. So let's hear the Chroma console and interference. So to me, one of the things I love about the failure and the gen loss is that it just felt random. It didn't feel like it was sequenced. I'm sure it is somewhere, but it didn't feel sequenced. I wasn't predicting what was going to come next and sitting there going, oh yeah. It just felt random, as you'll hear now, and again, great stereo spread. So there you go, that is failure and interference on the Chroma. I did mention that you can do all these independently, so let's just show you that now. And being really honest, have I ever used a sound where I'm adding loads of wow and flutter and failure on? No, because it just seems slightly over the top, unless that's what you're after. But it is an advantage, I think, that you can independently control these, where on the Chroma console, you can only select one of these 5 modules in texture at any one time to the same signal path. So let's just hear that all in on the Gen Loss Mark II. So there we go, got its place, and for some of you that might be exactly what you're after. The advantages of the Gen Loss Mark II, there's other stuff that goes on under the hood. You've obviously got your dip switches, but you can replicate the dip switches quite consistently in the gesture mode on the Chroma console. And if you want to know more about that, there'll be some links coming up on the screen very soon to my previous videos where I walk you through the gesture mode. The other thing that Gen Loss has got going for it is that it's got this functionality here. I'm not going to go into that now, but the secondary functionalities, for example, you could do a tape stop. So hopefully I did a good job of explaining why I think the texture module on the Chroma console is so similar to the functionality in the Gen Loss. You can't control them all at the same time, which is the only thing that I would add. But if you're after one of those effects, then I think it does a pretty good job. Obviously the Gen Loss Mark II is about the same cost as the Chroma console in its entirety. So that's something to bear in mind. But it obviously does all these things in combination, and you can layer them and really fine-tune them to get the sound that you're after. If you found this useful and you want to see more videos like this and anything else around music production gear, etc., then hit the subscribe button. Really appreciate you joining me here on my musical YouTube journey. Post up twice a week here on the channel and over on Instagram as well, Nick Rees YT. For YouTube. Be great if you could join me over there. Go down to the description below, there's all sorts of goodies in there. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.